Are you emotionally stable, well-adjusted, and absolutely convinced you've already survived enough family drama for one lifetime? Great. Sit down anyway. Before you scroll away, pretending this isn't about to get uncomfortable, let me warn you, stay until the end. This story escalates fast, unravels quietly,
and ends in a way that still makes me pause before I talk about it. And when you're done, I need you to come back and comment because I honestly don't know if I lost my mind or if you would have done the exact same thing. So yes, my friends, welcome. My loyal consumers of secondhand chaos. Get comfortable. Adjust the volume. Relax your shoulders. What you're about to hear is not inspiring, not mature, and definitely not something you'd frame with a motivational quote. It's a real-life soap opera. Too much drama. Poor emotional boundaries. And adults who should absolutely be in therapy. Starting with me. Take a deep breath and stay until the end, because if you already think I'm exaggerating, my lovely emotional support humans, you haven't met my family yet. And if at any point you think this feels disturbingly familiar, don't panic. We'll talk about it later. Before we go any further, if you're still here, do me a favor. Support the story with a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and share it with that friend who always says, "This reminds me of my family." Trust me, they'll thank you later. My name is Valentina, with AV for you're about to live this with me. And no, I'm not dramatic. I'm observant. I have selective memory. And I have a chronic intolerance to fake smiles and men who think charisma can replace honesty. This all started as these things usually do on a Sunday. Because if something deeply uncomfortable is going to happen in a family, it will always choose a Sunday. Preferably during lunch. Preferably when no one can escape. My mother called everyone over. Her voice sounded sweet. Too sweet. That suspicious sweetness that usually comes with big announcements and long-term consequences. "I have news," she said, smiling like she had just discovered love for the first time. Something inside me tightened immediately. My stomach. My chest. My intuition. That internal alarm that doesn't scream, but insists. I already knew that news never arrives alone. She took a deep breath, looked at each of us, and said it. "I'm engaged." Silence. Not peaceful silence. Not thoughtful silence. Heavy silence. The kind that settles on the table and makes even the silverware feel uncomfortable. I smiled. Automatically. Polite smile. Latin upbringing activated. Internal applause canceled. "Engaged?" I asked. "Just like that? No warning?" My mother nodded, glowing.
"His name is Carlos," she said. "You know him more or less."
And that's when he walked in. Carlos. Perfectly ironed shirt. Overly white smile. Hair styled with the kind of precision only men who practice charm in the mirror have. He opened his arms like he was stepping onto an invisible stage. "Family," he said. And in that exact moment I knew.
I didn't know what.
I didn't know how. But I knew. Something was wrong. Not paranoia. Not insecurity. Experience. That sixth sense you develop after meeting enough charming people who eventually turn out to be anything but. I watched him quietly. He looked at me. He smiled. A long, measured, practiced smile. "Valentina, right?"
he said. "I've heard so much about you."
Of course he had. Everyone always hears so much about me. Never anything specific.
Just so much.
I nodded, raised my glass, and said, "I hope everything they told you is a lie." Nervous laughter circled the table. My mother gave me a warning look. Carlos laughed too, but not with his eyes. And that, my friends, was the first note in what would become a very long, very exhausting symphony of emotional chaos. After that theatrical entrance, lunch continued. At least on the surface. Inside my head, though, I was already analyzing every movement like this was a psychological interrogation. Carlos sat at the table like he had always belonged there. No hesitation. No permission. He poured himself wine without asking. "So happy to finally share time with all of you," he said. "Family is everything." That sentence always comes right before someone destroys it. I watched him from the corner of my eye. My mother watched him like a miracle. And that realization hurt more than I expected. She was in love. And when someone is in love, logic takes an unannounced vacation. Carlos started with the small comments.
Subtle.
Strategic. The kind that, if you call them out, make you look dramatic. Valentina is very direct, he said, smiling. I like intense people, although they can be exhausting. Uncomfortable laughter. I raised an eyebrow. Thanks, I replied. I'm also allergic to fake behavior, but here I am. My mother nudged me under the table. Behave. But I had already been behaving far too much. Over the following weeks, Carlos played the perfect man. Attentive. Polite. Helpful. The kind of person who clears your plate before you're finished eating and asks if you're comfortable while quietly evaluating you. But with me, it was different. With me, there was always an extra comment. A correction disguised as concern. Advice no one asked for. You should smile more. You don't need to speak so loudly. You're very smart for someone so impulsive. That for someone lingered in the air like a warning. I responded with humor, with sarcasm, with irony. Because no one wants to be labeled unstable in the first episode. Relax, Carlos, I'd say. If you don't like how I am, you can always look the other way. He laughed. Always laughed. But his eyes never joined in. My mother, meanwhile, was deep inside a romantic bubble. To her, Carlos was attentive, protective, caring. And every time I tried to say something, the answers were always the same. You're being too harsh. He didn't mean it like that.
Give it time. Time.
The greatest enemy of intuition. One afternoon, while I was making coffee, Carlos leaned against the kitchen doorway and watched me in silence. Too much silence. Were you always like this? He asked. Like what? I replied without looking at him. So independent. So ungrateful. I turned slowly. Ungrateful for what exactly? He smiled. For someone loving your mother. That sentence landed heavy. Not a shout. Not an insult. An implication. My mother doesn't need to be loved as a condition, I said. And neither do I. He raised his hands theatrically. I'm just saying sometimes you seem jealous. Jealous. The favorite word when someone wants to invalidate you efficiently. No, I replied calmly. I seem alert. There's a difference. That night, I heard my mother crying behind her bedroom door. And I knew then that Carlos had started his work. Not loudly. Not obviously. Quietly. Patiently. The kind of manipulation that makes you doubt yourself. A few days later, my mother sat me down in the living room. Carlos feels like you don't accept him. And that's when I understood something crucial. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a narrative. And I hadn't written it. And once a narrative settles into a family, my friends, it doesn't ask for permission. It just rearranges the furniture and dares you to object. After that conversation, the air in the house changed. Not dramatically. Not overnight. Worse than that, gradually. Quietly. Like something sour spreading through water. Carlos didn't raise his voice. He didn't confront me openly. He didn't need to. He had already planted the idea that I was the difficult one. The sensitive one. The unstable variable. And once that seed is planted, everything you do becomes proof. My mother started watching me differently. Not always. Not constantly. That would have been too obvious. Sometimes she hugged me like nothing was wrong. Other times, she studied me like she was trying to solve a problem she didn't remember agreeing to have. Carlos, on the other hand, became patient. Almost serene. He stopped making comments at the table. He stopped correcting me in front of others. He learned something important: public kindness, private pressure. One afternoon, I passed him in the hallway. He leaned against the wall like he had been waiting for me. Valentina, he said softly, can I say something without you taking it the wrong way? That sentence should come with a warning label. That depends, I replied. Is it something I should take the wrong way? He smiled. That controlled, careful smile that never quite reached his eyes. Your mother is sensitive, he continued. And you're very intense. Sometimes you don't realize the impact you have. There it was again. Me, as the emotional hazard. Him, as the calm interpreter of reality. Interesting, I said. I thought adults were responsible for their own emotions. His jaw tightened for half a second. Just enough. I'm just saying you should be more careful with her, he finished. Careful. As if I were the danger. That night at dinner, my mother barely spoke. Carlos touched her arm gently every few minutes, like a reminder that he was there. Present. Supportive.
Solid.
I talked. She nodded. But she didn't really look at me. Mom, I asked, are you okay? Yes, she answered quickly. Just tired. Lie number 1. Later, when Carlos stepped outside to take a call, my mother turned to me with a look I didn't recognize. Do you have a problem with him? She asked. The question landed heavy. This wasn't curiosity. This was preparation. I have concerns, I said carefully. Not problems. He says you treat him badly. Something cracked inside me then. Not loudly. No tears. Just a quiet fracture that permanently shifts how you stand in a room. And what do you think?
I asked.
She hesitated. That pause was worse than any accusation. I think sometimes you exaggerate. And just like that, it was official. I wasn't the daughter anymore. I was a version of events. I tried to explain everything. The comments. The looks. The tone. The way every interaction felt like a test I hadn't agreed to take. She listened. Silent.
Exhausted.
Maybe you're projecting, she said finally. You've been through a lot. Translation, I don't believe you. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every sentence, wondering when exactly I'd lost control of the story of my own life. The next morning, Carlos was unusually pleasant. Did you sleep well? He asked. You look tired. I sleep perfectly when no one analyzes me, I replied. He laughed. Softly. You're very sensitive. Sensitive. Another favorite. That same day, I overheard something I wasn't meant to hear. I was walking past the kitchen when I heard their voices. They weren't arguing. They were speaking calmly.
Strategically.
I'm worried about Valentina, Carlos said. She doesn't seem well. Sometimes she sounds jealous. Sometimes aggressive. I don't want this to affect us. She's always been like that, my mother replied. Very intense. Always. That word landed like a verdict. I stepped away quietly, closed myself in my room, and sat on the bed staring at my hands. And that's when it hit me with brutal clarity. Carlos didn't need to confront me anymore. I was already isolated. A few days later, he asked to talk. Just the two of us. His tone was formal, almost professional, like this was a performance review. This can't continue, he said. I agree, I replied. It never should have started. He sighed, like a man burdened by responsibility he had volunteered for. Your attitude is affecting your mother, he said. And honestly, me. What a tragedy, I replied. 2 adults emotionally impacted by my existence. His expression hardened. If you keep this up, he continued, you're going to force her to choose.
Choose.
That word landed harder than anything else he had said.
That's not your place, I said.
It is if I love her, he answered without hesitation. And there it was. Not clumsiness. Not misunderstanding. Not insecurity.
Control.
That night, I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't try to convince anyone of anything. I packed. Packing while you still live somewhere is surreal. Every object feels like a question. Every drawer carries a memory that suddenly feels heavier than it should. I kept telling myself I wasn't running. I was choosing myself. But even the right decisions hurt when no one else validates them. My mother noticed the suitcase that afternoon. What are you doing? She asked from the doorway. No panic. No anger. Just exhaustion. I'm leaving for a few days, I said. I need space. Space from who? She asked. I wanted to say the truth. From him. From this. From feeling like an intruder in my own home. But I said, from the situation. Silence. Carlos has nothing to do with this, she said. When someone defends without being asked, they've already chosen.
Of course not, I replied.
He never does. Carlos appeared almost immediately, concern perfectly rehearsed. Is everything okay? He asked. Valentina is leaving, my mother said. Carlos looked at me like I was proving his point.
See? He said.
This is exactly what I meant. Something in my voice hardened. What exactly did you mean? I asked. That I'm unstable? Difficult? Too much? No one is attacking you, he replied. You put yourself there. Gaslighting, clean and efficient. That's interesting, I said. Because I've spent months defending myself from things that supposedly don't exist. That's your perception, he said calmly. And perception isn't reality. And then my mother said it. Maybe Carlos is right, she whispered. You've been very defensive. That was the moment something broke completely. If I leave, I said, looking at her, it's not because he wins. It's because I already lost here. No one answered. No one wants you to go, Carlos added. We just want harmony. Harmony. The word people use when they want silence dressed as peace. Harmony isn't built by silencing someone, I said. It's built by listening. You always dramatize, my mother replied. That's when I knew my version no longer fit in this house. I finished packing. Looked around my room. It used to feel like safety. Now it felt borrowed. Carlos appeared in the doorway one last time. This didn't have to happen, he said. No, I replied. But you did. His smile vanished. You're making a mistake.
No, I said.
I'm avoiding a bigger one. I walked down the stairs with the suitcase in my hand. My mother sat on the couch. She didn't stand. She didn't hug me.
She didn't stop me. Call me, she said.
When you're ready to listen, I answered. I left. The door closed behind me. Not loud. Not dramatic. Final. In the car, I felt everything at once.
Fear, guilt, sadness,
and relief. Because sometimes staying hurts more than leaving. That night, I slept at a friend's place. I looked at myself in the mirror before bed. Exhausted. But clear. Carlos had the house. But I had my voice back. And that story wasn't over yet. If you made it this far, pause for a second. Support this story with a like. It tells the algorithm and me that you're still here. And trust me, what comes next is where everything finally cracks open. The days after I left were strangely quiet. Too quiet. And when silence stretches for too long, my friends, it isn't peace. It's pressure building up somewhere you can't see. My mother didn't call. Carlos didn't text. The house continued to exist without me. And that hurt more than I expected to admit. I told myself I had done the right thing. That leaving wasn't abandonment. It was self-respect. That choosing myself didn't make me selfish. My head understood all of that. My chest, not so much. I stayed with a friend. I borrowed calm. I slept too much, then not at all. I replayed conversations I swore I wouldn't revisit. That's the thing about walking away, your body leaves first, but your mind lingers like it forgot something important. Then one random afternoon, my phone buzzed.
Mom.
I stared at the screen longer than necessary. Took a deep breath. The kind you take when you already know the conversation won't be light.
Hello, I said.
Silence on the other end. Not empty. Trembling. Valentina, she started. Are you okay? The question arrived late, but it arrived. I'm alive, I replied. Which is something.
She sighed. The house feels strange, she said. Strange. Such a small word for what was coming.
Carlos has been very tense, she continued. He says everything feels different since you left. I almost laughed. Almost. That's interesting, I said. I felt like that living there. She didn't answer right away. And in that pause, I sensed something shifting. He's changed, she admitted. He gets angry over small things. Questions everything I do. Says I make him nervous. There it was. The mask didn't fall dramatically. It cracked quietly. Does that surprise you? I asked carefully.
No, she said.
It worries me. The following days were filled with short calls, vague messages, and long silences. Carlos was no longer charming. He was irritable, impatient, controlling. One night, my mother called me whispering.
He checked my phone, she said.
Said it was for safety. A chill ran up my spine. That's not care, I said. That's control. He says I exaggerate, she replied.
Of course he did.
One evening, she called crying.
We argued, she said.
Over nothing. Over everything. I sat on the bed, phone pressed to my ear, and listened. This time, I didn't interrupt. Didn't explain. Didn't warn. He said, "I've been distant since you left," she continued. "That you fill my head with ideas." That's when I felt it, anger and relief colliding. "Mom," I said softly, "no one fills the head of someone who thinks." Silence. Then a long breath. "I think I made a mistake," she said. That sentence weighed more than anything else she could have said. I didn't celebrate. I didn't say "I told you so." Because when someone wakes up, they don't need judgment. They need ground. "You're not the first," I said. "And you won't be the last." Weeks passed. Carlos stopped pretending. There was no audience anymore. No daughter to blame. No distraction. So the problem became visible. Then came the message. From Carlos. "We need to talk." I laughed. Out loud. Alone in the room. "No," I whispered. "We didn't need to talk." He needed control back. I didn't reply. Minutes later, another message. "You're manipulating your mother." That one I answered. "I don't live there anymore. What happens now isn't my responsibility." No immediate response. But consequences came fast. That same night, my mother called. "I told him to leave," she said, voice shaking. My chest tightened. "What?" I asked. "He left," she repeated. "He didn't accept boundaries. He said horrible things." I closed my eyes. There it was. The collapse of the character. "I'm sorry," she said, "for not listening to you sooner." And that's when I understood something painful and powerful. Sometimes they don't believe you until the monster has no one left to blame. My mother wasn't the same after that. Neither was I. But something had shifted between us. Truth had entered the room. And truth always leaves consequences behind. Seeing her again was harder than I imagined. No dramatic music. No slow motion. Just a small cafe, a table, and two women trying not to step on memories. She looked different. Thinner. Tired. Like someone who had spent weeks sleeping badly and thinking too much. We hugged. Awkward. Long, unsure. The kind of hug that says "I love you, and I don't know how to fix this" at the same time. We sat. Ordered coffee. Silence. This silence was different. Not hostile. Guilty. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Thank you for telling the truth," I replied. She nodded. When he left, she said, everything felt heavy. Every opinion became an argument. I listened. I didn't interrupt. It was her process. "He said I provoked him," she continued. "That if he got angry, it was because I didn't know how to handle you or myself." Same script. Different target. "That's not love," I said calmly. "That's control wearing makeup." She sighed. "I know that now." We looked at each other. And for the first time in months, there was no distance. Just shared exhaustion. "I wanted you to be proud of me," she said suddenly. "Proud of what?" I asked. "Of choosing well," she said. "Of being happy." And something clicked. She hadn't chosen Carlos against me. She had chosen a version of herself she desperately wanted to believe in. "You don't have to prove anything to me," I said. "You just had to listen." She nodded. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She never cries when she should. "I'm sorry," she said, "for doubting you." Forgiveness didn't rush in. It walked slowly, with caution. "Thank you for saying it," I replied. "That matters." That night, I got another message. From Carlos. "I want to apologize." I stared at the screen. Didn't answer. "I didn't mean to hurt you." Still nothing. Then the final message. "Your mother turned you against me." I locked the phone. And in that moment, I understood something essential. Some people never apologize. They just try to rewrite the story one last time. I never replied. The next day, my mother called. "He wrote to me," she said. "Says he misses you." "That's not my problem," I replied. "I know," she said. "I just wanted to be honest." For the first time, honesty didn't hurt. Time passed. Slowly. Not gently. I went back to the house weeks later to pick up the last of my things. Carlos wasn't there. But his presence still was. In the air. In the pauses. In the way decisions were now reconsidered. My mother walked with me silently as I packed. "Thank you for coming back," she said. Thank you for letting me leave, I answered. At the door, I paused. If I ever feel like I don't belong here again, I said, I'll tell you. She nodded. And I'll listen. That was enough. I never heard from Carlos again. And I don't want to. Not every story needs a reconciliatory ending. Some only need distance. Today, I don't feel anger. I feel clarity. Some people don't want love. They want control. Some silences protect. Others betray. And leaving isn't always losing. Sometimes it's the only way to win.
So let me ask you, what would you have done in my place? Would you have stayed quiet to keep the peace? Would you have shrunk to fit? Or would you have walked away, even if it hurt? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear you. And if this story stirred something inside you, share it with someone who needs it. Because sometimes, hearing someone else's story is exactly what gives us permission to save ourselves in time.